Hello, my wonderful pen friends. It is a miserable, snowy, wet, gross, overcast day outside, and I don't want to be out in it, so instead I thought what better way to spend it than in here with you talking about pens. And, just to mix things up a little bit, I thought I might even, talk about currently inked pens on currently inked, just for the fun of it. Anyway, we've got some fun stuff coming up in this episode, some good questions. So let's start off with the mailbag, as we are wont to do. So I did get a care package from our good friends at Gold Spot Pens, who are a sponsor of the Pen Habit, including a new bottle of ink for giveaway. And that ink is this. It is the Kobe ink. So Kobe ink is made by Sailor for a store in Kobe, Japan. And this is their number 4, Ijinkan Red. I'm sure I'm massacring that pronunciation. But I have not swatched this. I will swatch it before I send it to you. So you will get, whoever ends up winning this in the giveaway will get an opened and swatched bottle of ink, because I don't have a swatch of that. So I may take a little sample for myself, but I'm sending you the rest, I promise. So they sent that along. The other pen that they sent along, which is very fun, is this little pen. So Cross, the US company Cross, started doing these Star Wars themed fountain pens last year. They did a set of a few of them, and this year they've done a few more. And they sent along this Chewbacca pen for me to review and then send back. I don't get to keep. It's one of their Townsend models that is customized to represent Chewbacca. So here it is, and it's got this, it's got like striations. It's supposed to look like hair in the body of the pen, and this design on the back. I've got a full review of this coming, not in the not too distant future, so I'm not going to talk about it too much now. It's been an interesting experience for me to use this pen because I don't really have much of an emotional tie to Star Wars. I didn't even see the first films until I was like 21 when they did the re-releases. So Star Wars, it's fine, but I'm not crazy about it. So I'm actually looking at this more from a pen perspective, which may or may not make some people mad. The other thing that's kind of interesting about this is comes with this little pen stand. It's got the Star Wars logo on one side and the Cross logo on the other, which I think is probably for people who want to display it, because there's people who are so crazy about Star Wars, they'll buy the pen just because it has Star Wars name on it and want to display it in their little personal museum. So it'll be interesting to do the review on that one. I just inked it up last night. I haven't even written with it yet. And because it is inked, it is currently inked. And so I decided to go with this Graf von Faber Castell Hazelnut Brown, and I thought it's a pretty good match for the pen. Not that I'm necessarily matchy-matchy with pen and ink, but it's pretty well, works pretty well. Interestingly enough, these Graf von Faber Castell inks are interesting, and I've done a review of this ink. They come in the most beautiful bottles. In fact, I think I've got one here. Yeah, this is the moss green color, so really just stunningly beautiful bottles. But they're pretty expensive, and they've got a unique feel when you write with them. They tend to be a little, I don't know, chalky? It's kind of a weird word. I mean, they don't seem to be as wet or lubricated as a lot of other inks. So I like the inks a lot. They're really well behaved, but they're a little unusual. I don't see a lot of inks that are quite the same, that behave quite the same way that they do. So that review will be coming up in a few weeks, I suspect. I need a little time with the pen to make sure that to make sure I understand how it writes and all that fun stuff. All right, well, we have got a bunch of questions. I mean, I've got dozens and dozens of questions to get to in this backlog, so I'm just going to start plowing through them and see how many we can get answered. I'm going to try to keep this video a little bit on the shorter side, so we'll see how that goes. This first question comes from Jeremy in Maryland, who says, is it me, or is Kenro, and by extension Aurora and Monte Grappa, hitting it out of the park lately? It seems from the outside that ever since they dropped prices, they've gotten real traction in the community and are delivering actually special releases in recent months. Am I imagining this or making too much of it? I actually think I agree with you there. Kenro has been knocking it out of the park, and while the price drop helped, I think what has really made the difference from my point of view is that Kenro is pretty much, if I had to pick one distributor in the world right now who is embracing the change that is happening with the online pen community, it's Kenro. They seemed to get really quickly and much faster than a lot of the other distributors are getting that the world has changed. And they're actually taking advantage of the internet in a way that none of the other distributors are doing it. Like Kenro has worked really hard to develop relationships with the retailers who are active on the internet. A lot of the bloggers, including myself, I know the folks at Kenro, and it's been interesting. It's only been a couple of years, but I've seen a real shift in attitude. I went to the DC show in 2015, and Kenro had a table there. I think they probably went every year. And I walked by that table probably 5 or 6 times. This was back when Omas was still in production, and looking at the Omases, and I don't think anyone talked to me the entire time. Everyone was there in their suits with the pocket squares and looking very, very high-end and luxury and all that. And they kind of treated me like someone who walked into a high-end boutique and didn't belong there. It's like they couldn't be bothered to talk to me. And I've sensed, and it's the same people that went to the 2015 show that have come to the shows afterwards, and the attitude has completely changed. They're much more engaged. They love talking with folks. They love to really, talk up their pens and let you try stuff. And they're just really engaged. And I think that has made all the difference in the world. They understand what the online and the new entrants to the fountain pen hobby want. And they work really closely with the retailers to make sure the retailers know. Because the retailers aren't doing the market research. I mean, they have ideas and they've got designers and all of that stuff. But I would be willing to bet that a lot of the really good ideas have been coming from the distributors who interact with the public, especially in this case where, Aurora and Montegrappa, they're both Italian companies. And so they may be removed from some of the very active community that seems to take place a lot here in the United States. So yeah, I think they are knocking it out of the park, but I think it has less to do with the price drop and more to do with their recognition of and willingness to adapt to the situation on the internet, which is kind of cool. Our next question comes from Wasim in Iraq, who says, I am an architect with lefty, small hand size. Could you please help me to buy a fountain pen that lasts for a lifetime, using it for a lot of sketching and writing? My budget is up to $300. Wasim, I really struggle with these kinds of questions, so I'll do my best to give you a couple of guidelines. You don't mention what your writing style is. You don't mention whether you write overhand or underhand. So it's really, really hard to say. A couple of things to look at while you're looking at pens. Because you are a lefty, if you're going right to left, left to right, up to down, I apologize. This is just an area that I'm not particularly familiar with, but at least in English, lefties who write left to right tend to, run their hand through the ink they just wrote. So a finer line is generally appreciated. A slightly drier ink flow is generally appreciated. And for sketching, I'm going to guess you're probably going to want a finer lined pen rather than a real broad, heavy pen. So I would look toward the Japanese pens. They're well built. Their nibs are going to be really well adjusted. You don't need a special pen for lefties. You just need a pen that is adjusted to best suit you. So I would look at the Platinums and Sailors in particular. The Platinum 3776 is a good option. Look for, a fine or an extra fine nib there, or the Sailors, you can look at the 1911. There's a Sailor 1911 Realo, which is a piston filler, so if you want a larger ink capacity, that would be a really good option for you to consider. So I might look there first, but if there are other lefties out there who use their pens for sketching, before I get to that, one other thing I would probably avoid is any soft or flexi nibs. If you're not specifically looking to do flex writing, stay with rigid nibs. That will help. I know a lot of lefties really struggle with soft nibs. The Platinum 3776 soft fine, for instance, a lot of the lefties I know can't even get the thing to write. So I would stick with a rigid nib and go with a finer line and give that a go. So, and if there's anyone out there who has suggestions for Wasim, go ahead and leave them in the comments here or over on penhabit.com. Christine in Pennsylvania asks, have you tried the Sailor Storia inks? How do they behave compared to the other Japanese inks, and are they worth buying? I actually haven't tried them, and for those who aren't familiar, the Storia inks are a line of pigmented inks that Sailor makes, which is different than the dye-based inks that Sailor makes. From what I understand, and like I said, I don't have personal experience with these, they behave very similarly to fountain pen inks with the added caveat that you have to make sure to practice good pen hygiene. Any pigmented inks can tend to plug up the ink flow on a pen if the pen is not well maintained. So I would not leave a pigmented ink in a pen for weeks and weeks at a time without use. They also come in some unusual colors that I don't find particularly engaging, at least from my side, so I've just never really been all that tempted by them. Again, if anyone out there has experience with the Sailor Storia inks and can provide some insight, I'd love to hear it, so please leave it in the comments section down below. All right, let's do another currently inked here, and this one is a beauty. So I'm going to preface my currently inked by saying you're going to start seeing the same pens over and over again. As I continue to whittle down my collection over time, I have fewer and fewer pens, and I'm using the pens I like more and more. So you're going to see a lot of repeats here. So it may be a little bit less interesting than it used to be, but I just wanted to call that out. This is one I know I've shown before, but it's one that I love. This is my 1937 Parker Vacumatic Oversize in excellent condition. It's got a beautiful flexy stub nib, and the finish is nigh unto pristine. I've got it inked up with Diamine Ancient Copper. It's very autumnal ink, and we're heading down the slope of autumn into winter here pretty soon, but it's a beautiful autumnal ink, one I always pull out this time of year because I just like it so much. Also of interest, with Diamine Ancient Copper, I've seen a lot of people online complain about nib crud, where it's like the ink kind of soaks up through the breather hole and the slit and kind of crusts on the nib. It's harmless. I have never, ever, ever had that happen with Ancient Copper. I know it does. I've seen the photos, but for some reason, my bottle of Ancient Copper just does not do that. And I've put it in probably 2 or 3 dozen different pens. So I know some people have that problem. I just don't, and I'm not entirely sure why. In any case, I adore this pen. It's this is my favorite vintage pen to use. It's smooth, it's juicy, it's wet, it's bouncy and almost flexy. It's pretty. It's really comfortable in the hand. And I'm hoping, since the weather outside is so putrescent right now, that I will be able to, I'll be able to sit down and do a little bit of letter writing this afternoon. I have to go out and order a new dining room table. I'm having one custom made, but after that I want to sit down and do some letter writing. So hopefully some of my pen pals who have been waiting for well over a year to get a response to their letters will get a letter with a little bit of Ancient Copper from that beauty in it. Okay, back to the questions. This one comes from Ron in the UK, who says, I started using fountain pens in junior school, age somewhere between 8 to 11 years old. It's fair to say, over the last 50 years or so, I have bought a lot of fountain pens. I've kept only a few. Those I don't like are given away or thrown in the bin, depending on how much I paid. Those I've retained are a strange mix, including the usual luxury suspects of Mont Blanc and Pelican, and low-end Jinhao. This last Christmas, I bought myself a present, an Onoto Magna. Since then, I've not used any other pen. For me, the Onoto is as close to perfect as a pen can get. So, do I need another pen? No. Will I buy another pen? Of course I will. In fact, I already have. So here's the question. What is it about fountain pens that makes sensible, intelligent people take leave of their senses, abuse their wallet, and buy pens and ink, and more pens they simply don't need? Ron, if I had the answer to that question, do you think I'd be sitting in a padded room talking to myself? I would not. First of all, apropos of almost nothing you just wrote, I've never actually tried an Onoto pen. I might have to see if I can get a hold of one because I don't have one. I don't know that I've ever even seen one. They're not very common here in the States. So why do we buy the pens? Man, I wish I knew the answer to that question. I think there's something about pens and this hobby in particular that appeals to people who are collectors by nature. I know a lot of people in the hobby collect other things. It's not just pens, and they're into antiques and they're into artwork and they're into other stationary items or other hobbies. There's watches and knives, and there seems to be a lot of overlap between people who get into pens and people who like to collect. So I suspect that Venn diagram, there's only a sliver of people who get into fountain pens who don't like to collect things. I also believe, and I believe this just from my own personal experience, that there's a group of people who just like buying things. I am certainly in that camp. I love to buy things. I love to go shopping. I love spending money. I wish I didn't. It would make my life a whole lot easier, but I really, really enjoy it. And pens are a unique thing in that they're unusual. They can be very luxury, and I do tend to lean toward luxury items, and they're unique, and there's so much variation. I'm going to talk about this a little bit in a later question, but pens have personality, and no two pens are exactly the same. So I think there is an aspect of this hobby that is about seeking out perfection, seeking out that one thing that speaks to you in a way that nothing else does. And it's tricky because even when you have something you love, I think for a lot of us, there's this aspect of wanting to find something that's just that little bit better. And so we keep going out and looking for things or trying stuff we've never tried before, any of that kind of thing. So if I had to guess, that would be the reason in my book, is why we do that, because it's a quest. It becomes almost a religious thing where we have to go find the holy grail of pens. And as soon as we find it, then the bar gets moved and we want to find something better. But you know what? I've gotten a lot better. I don't buy very much anymore. And I really am enjoying using what I have. But I also know that's not going to last forever. At some point, I'm going to see something I want and go, oh, I must have that. And it'll probably cost a lot of money. And, I'm getting better, but I'm not cured. So yeah, I wish I knew how to do it. And moreover, I wish I knew how to stop it. So this is a good question, though. The last question for this episode comes from Dallas in Amarillo, Texas, who says, Pilot 74, Pilot Custom 823, Lamy 2000, or Platinum 3776. Which one would you choose if you could only pick one, regardless of nib size? For me, that question is really easy. The Pilot Custom 823, hands down, and by a pretty substantial margin. It is very close to a perfect pen. It's comfortable, huge ink capacity, amazing nib, dead consistent, robust. It is so much fun to use. I really, really like the pen. So that's the one I would pick. The rest of them in order would be the Platinum 3776, then the Pilot 74, then the Lamy 2000. With the caveat that the Lamy 2000 is still a really, really, really good pen. On my list of recommendations, the 2K is way up there. So you picked some very, very good items from that list. The only reason I might recommend the 2000 over the Platinum or the Pilot 74 is the Lamy 2000 is a piston filler and you don't have to deal with Pilot's terrible converters. Aside from, if you need that big ink capacity, that's helpful, but if you don't, that's the order I would do. So hopefully that is a little helpful to you, and if you get the 823, you'll have to let me know what you think. All right, well, that will do it for this episode of Currently Inked. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget, if you're interested in supporting the Pen Habit, go over to penhabit.com and click on the support link at the top of the page. You can support in a bunch of different ways. Patreon is maybe one of the best, where for every video I put out, you can you can pledge a small amount of money, $1, $2, whatever, and then limit it per month. So if you say, hey, I only want to give you $5 a month, or $2 a month, or $10 a month, whatever it is, you can say, I want to do a $1 video, maximum of $10 a month. That way, if I don't put any videos out, you're not paying for anything. And if I do put out videos, this helps, defray the costs of everything, the equipment and the editing and all that fun stuff. So that's really helpful. Also, you can support by donations via PayPal or Patreon, or PayPal or Venmo. And of course, there are the Inky Fingers notebooks, which you can purchase from penhabit.com or from vanness1938.com or pocketnotebooks.co.uk. All of those help support the Pen Habit as well. So thank you for watching. We'll see you here soon for another Currently Inked. Bye.